3, 2, 1.
Here we go!
Hey everybody, and welcome back to the College Esports Update. I am your host, Norris Howard. And listen, we know some of you are going to be looking for more news on the Overwatch Collegiate Championship Finals. We're going to actually talk about that on the on-campus video. So if you're looking for information, make sure you go to the on-campus video. We're going to talk about that at length, about that grand finals between Northwood and Maryville. But here, we're first going to talk a little College COD. Andrew, let us know what happened in a strange week of Call of Duty.
How you doing, Norris? As you mentioned, very strange week of the College COD. Over the past 9 to 10 weeks, we've had nothing but action-packed in the College COD community. But we've had to go through a little hiatus just to get the regular season finalized and get us ready for these regional qualifiers and get us ready for that final 64.
Yeah, so the thing that I want to, kind of talk about is that talking about those regional qualifiers, who is in the best position really to get some of those top seeds? Because we know that there's a lot of teams, there's a lot of bubble teams. That second split saw, the bottom teams kind of vying for their last opportunity to potentially make the postseason. Who's in the best position right now? We know about Ottawa, black and gold, but who are some of the other teams that have put themselves in a good position for the postseason?
Yeah, you're exactly correct. So, as we mentioned, we've always covered the top 25 power rankings. So we've heard nothing but Ottawa, Sheridan, all those good name colleges that are definitely on the top of their game. But as you mentioned, there are going to be some of the lower tiers sneaking in there, hopefully going to shake up the world there. So what I was looking at, it was region by region. So I went from Appalachian, Atlantic, Coastal, and I was kind of doing a little research here. And what I did end up finding out is that in the Coastal region, I think that's going to be one of the closest regions because we've had a lot of the top 25 ranked auto bids in there that are actually going to be qualifying right away to the top 64. But there are some in the regional qualifiers that I'm going to be looking at, like Alabama Crimson. Those are going to be the ones that I really want to make sure are going to be getting into that final bracket.
Yeah, and we also have the Sheridan region, which has the #1 seed. Sheridan, as you mentioned, they're very, very strong. Probably, arguably favored to win it all outside of Ottawa. You also have Ryerson, Humber, and Carleton. All of these are incredibly strong teams, and I wouldn't be surprised if any of those ended up taking the entire tournament. Now, moving out west, looking at the Pacific region, we got 4 teams that have automatically qualified. Tell us a little bit about those teams.
Yeah, as you mentioned, the Pacific region, we have 3 of the 4 that were auto-qualified for the region there. So as we see, the first seeded SUL Blacks of Long Beach, we've talked about them numerous times here, numerous competitions they went through that they have proved to be that #1 seed coming out of the Pacific region. The second seed out of that region is going to be CU Black, Colorado, and Oregon Green at #3. And the 4th seed is going to be the Arizona Wildcats. So it is going to be an action-packed West Coast to see what's coming out.
Absolutely, absolutely. And obviously, there's even more teams to make that final 64. We're going to break that down fully as we approach the playoffs. We're going to talk about more of these regions, who's winning out, who's looking good. And I can't wait for this playoff series because once that national bracket gets all the way filled out, we're in for a lot of really great Call of Duty. So, Andrew, thank you so much for doing a little bit of research and seeing who's going to end up coming out on top of those regions as well as who may sneak in from those bottom brackets. So we look forward to talking to you in the future.
Thank you, Norris. I can't wait.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the College Esports Update, and now we are joined by Michigan's own, one of my favorite people in the world of esports, Coach Adam Antor, coming to us from Aquinas College. Coach, what's going on?
I'm doing great, Norris. How are you?
I'm doing excellent, my friend, and we're here to talk a little bit of CLAW. Now, we got most of the teams filled out for the national bracket. We are waiting on those at-large teams, but we talk a lot about the Cardinal Direction conferences, the biggest conferences, North, South, East, and West, biggest schools, Maryville, Harrisburg, Western. A lot of those teams are already locked in, but let's talk a little bit about the partner conferences because we haven't had a lot of time to really touch on those teams. So who are some of the squads coming in from the partner conferences that'll play a part in the national bracket?
Yeah. So the Cardinal direction spots are only 13 of the 28 that we know right now. So there is a good chunk of schools that we have not talked about yet that have a great opportunity to make a name for themselves and potentially walk away with a national championship. So let's run through a couple of those. First, we look at the Big Sky Conference. We've got Montana State. DePaul came out of the Big East. Farmingdale State College and New York Tech from the East Coast Conference. RPI will be representing the ECAC, which is a strong conference out on the East Coast. While Northeastern is actually the representative for the Esports Collegiate Conference, which the University of Buffalo barely came up short of winning in that finals. Moving into the Landmark Conference, we've got Waniata College and Goucher College, Marist College from the Metro Atlantic, Grandview from the Midwest Esports Conference, Colorado State and Boise from the Mountain West, Kennesaw State and Florida South College from the Peach Belt, and the University of the Pacific from the West Coast Conference. So a lot of names. I'm just spewing names at this point, spewing names of conferences. There's just so many to talk about.
There are a lot of teams, but I specifically want to touch on three right quick. We have Colorado State and Boise from the Mountain West and Grandview from the Midwest Esports Conference. Now, we know that Colorado State, again, a very strong esports program, performs very well in Rocket League as well. They are looking to make some noise. And Boise State, again, Boise State in the mix somewhere. How do you view their chances out of this? Because, again, those two teams are some pretty strong programs. Do they have what it takes to go up against some of the big names here?
I think, a lot of it's going to come down to playoff seeding and who they end up coming up against in the first and second round. Boise State is a team that I'm actually surprised didn't win their conference outright. But they're a talented roster. But what really could end that, the pursuit for a national title, is going up against a Maryville or a Harrisburg round one. That would be a really big challenge for Boise that I'm not quite sure they're ready to overcome. But if they come up against one of these other partner schools, round one, round two, they might find a way to make a deep run into this bracket. Colorado State, another team that we're watching out for here. Grandview University, I think, is a really strong team. Most coaches' polls put them in the top 10 in the country. So look for them to make a deep run. And then out of Esports Collegiate Conference, I mean, you look at the team Northeastern University out of that conference. That's a really strong team who beat a strong Buffalo team, who has the potential of being an at-large bid when we look at Buffalo and their current roster. So there's a couple of these teams that we're really looking out for as coaches and analysts of CLOL to make a deep run into the playoffs.
Yeah, and very briefly, last thing I want to ask is we do have those 4 at-large bids still floating around there. If you had to put it on your Nostradamus hat, who do you think some of those teams could be to get those at-large bids?
I think there are teams we've been talking about all year that just came up short in their conference playoffs that we kind of expect to end up being there. I think we look at a Bethany, Michigan State, York University has a potential to be one of those teams. Buffalo, it might be a part of those conversations, and Columbia College potentially. Really hard to say because there are these teams that are right on the cusp and would have easily qualified in some of these partnered conferences or even other regional conferences at the Cardinal directions. They just hit some tough teams late in their playoffs. So look for those types of teams potentially as earning those at-large bids, but it's really, I think, too early to say, and we won't know until it's officially announced by the CLOL selection committee, as well as from JT, who runs CLOL over at Riot.
Well, thank you so much, Coach, for that update. We look forward to talking to you a little bit, especially as we get closer to the playoffs and we get a sense of what the brackets will be. College Esports update. We back one more time. We're bringing in Dominic Shotson, so you already know, if it ain't Hearthstone, it's got to be Rocket League. Carball is getting talked about right now. So, Dom, listen, I got to put this out there right now. We had an intrastate rivalry go down, and Ohio State takes down Akron. Talk to us a little bit about this one, because this was nuts.
Big win for Ohio State. Akron slipped off their pedestal a little bit this week. I mean, Akron obviously is right there with Northwood. We've been talking about them for the past couple weeks as one of the top teams, obviously top 3 in this entire league. But Akron was missing one of their top players this week in Tristan. Don't really know the reason. Either way, I hope he's doing well. But they looked off without Tristan this week. From the first game, you could tell that they weren't as crisp as they normally are. Missing some easy shots that should have been put in for finishing touches, like on empty net goals. They had opportunities to get insurance goals that would have led to just enough padding to win. But in game 1, they just kept letting Ohio State stay in it. They went to overtime, and Akron did pull out that win. And then in game 2, same story. They barely came out of that game with a 1-0 victory, and the tables just started turning. Ohio State, they kind of knew that they could just pressure in Akron's half over and over, basically the entire game. And they took over the series in game 3. They won game 3, 2-1. And then in game 4, they went up with 3 goals in the first 52 seconds. Just pressure, just like crazy on Akron the entire time. And then they just held on. That was enough. Those 3 goals in the first 52 seconds was enough to hang on. They win 3-2 in game 4. And then in game 5, we just see more of the same for Akron this week, which was, disappointing to see. Just poor finishing touches, defensive breakdowns. Like the goals that Ohio State were getting were just open nets a lot of the time. It wasn't like, hard fought, goals. So there was a really great highlight in game 5 from Ohio State with the off the ceiling, like musty flip reset from one of their best players. But they pull off the reverse sweep on Akron. And Ohio State, this is a team that we weren't really watching and expecting from them to be like, a top contender. They haven't, played a lot of games yet, but this is a big win for them, and maybe it starts something for them. But Akron, they have to be disappointed in this kind of a loss, even though they were missing one of their best players. It's no excuse. They're supposed to be one of the top teams, and they should be able to beat Ohio State, even if they're missing Tristan.
No, I absolutely agree with that. And again, you still got 2/3. You still got, over 60% of that starting lineup there. The loss of one player, while it is Tristan, and Tristan is a player of immense talent, it shouldn't swing this way for Akron. And I think that's a big concern moving forward. I think a lot of these teams really need to start looking at maybe having a 4 or 5 person roster where they're deep enough to be able to not have that sort of loss of edge. As you said, when I watched it, that was the main thing I took away from it. The rotations were not there. The defensive mindset was not there. And even though Akron was able to execute on certain forms, especially in the midfield, the finishing wasn't there. And so for me, you see just how much they lose on both sides of the ball by not having Tristan there. It was really shocking. And on the other sort of foot, you got Northwood that continues to dominate and look very good, albeit they haven't lost any players, but they continue to dominate. And so, Dom, moving forward, looking at week 3, what do we got to look forward to?
So the 2 teams we were just talking about, Akron and Northwood, head-to-head this week on Thursday. They'll be facing off 2 times in the same stream, back-to-back. That's going to be a slobber knocker of sets. We're going to see, hopefully, Tristan's back for Akron. We want to see them at full strength versus Northwood. We want to see the 2 giants go head-to-head at full strength. But also out in the West, another game to watch. One of your teams that you really like, Arizona, is going up against LSU, the tops. One of the top teams in the West, still undefeated. They kept their undefeated run going in week 2. So we'll see Arizona and LSU score off. But the real big match will be seeing who's going to come out, Northwood or Akron. Really exciting week for CRL.
Thanks, Dom. And so we are looking forward to that LSU match. Not a perfect team, but they got some things going for them, as well as Arizona. That's going to be it for that, Dom. We thank you, and we got more coming up on the College Esports Update. We got to very quickly go through some Rainbow Six, Collegiate Rainbow Six. Sebastian is here for us. Sebastian, what's going on in Rainbow Six?
Well, this week we saw the entirety of the Collegiate R6 Invitational, the finals. It was a best of 5, which is different from the previous best of 3s. The finals saw Purdue versus NC State. Purdue ended up winning 3-0 in pretty. It was a very close match. It was a very close 3-0. Most of the matches went. Most of the maps went pretty far. Two of the three maps went to overtime, but NC State wasn't able to pull out anything, unfortunately. But Purdue walking away as Collegiate R6 Invitational champs after very strong performances by everyone on their team. Mainly Mila, who consistently dropped like 15 plus kills throughout the entire tournament.
That's pretty crazy. That's pretty crazy. And definitely, again, I just want to hit on this because a lot of people don't talk about this. This is another big win from a Big Ten school. Again, the Midwest coming through. And, you know, it's not just on the coast, everybody. R6, Rocket League, Overwatch, League of Legends, almost every collegiate program, the best school or nearly the best school is coming from the Midwest. So I want everybody to pay attention to that one. R6, very intense competition. So congratulations to Purdue for that big win. And Sebastian, thank you so much for sharing that information. Who was the team that you were a little disappointed in very quickly that you were thinking maybe could have did a little bit better?
Well, obviously Akron. They were definitely the favorite heading into this. Well, I had them winning in my personal bracket. But they came out flat against Purdue. They lost 2-0, but it was a close 2-0. They just couldn't pull off one more round in map 2 to send us to map 3, unfortunately.
Yeah, so that's going to be it for our R6 update. Sebastian, thank you so much for that information. And that's also going to be it for the College Esports update. We look forward to seeing you guys back here next week where we got even more playoffs gearing up and raring to go as the semester is starting to wrap up. So make sure you guys stick around for that. For the team here at Checkpoint on campus, your host Norris Howard here. We'll see y'all later.